I come from, I think, a pretty low. Large fan. Well, let me get this off from the get-go. I've been making some comments about transgender, and I used to make it a habit. I never discussed politics, religion, or things. What's the word am I looking for? My 82 years is kicking in again. Stuff that's gets people all excited one way or the other about their beliefs and everything. And I've been getting some comments again what I said. I had one, by the way, Doug Winkler, my first cousin, I said I would mention him on my next video, and so I just mentioned you, Dougie. He's my Aunt Dorothy's youngest kid. Matter of fact, when Aunt Dorothy was pregnant with Doug, I was 20 years old, I believe. Granddaddy Pearson, who is Luther Russell Pearson, grumbled about her being too old to have another baby. I didn't hear him say that myself, but I heard other family members saying he was talking about her being too old. Anyway, back to this transgender thing. I don't have nothing against transgender people or homosexuals, lesbians. I don't have anything against any of those folks. Not my cup of tea, but it's not my cup of tea. That's all there is to it. The only thing I have against transgender is transgender men that they say they're a woman. Now, I don't know what makes, I don't know if it's just thinking that, or but did they have something physically done to them to make them? But I don't know. I don't care. I don't even want to know. The thing that I'm saying is that a transgender man is biologically a man, and he can say transgender all he wants to. He has no business whatsoever. He or she, I don't even know what to call them. They have no business joining in on women's sports and competing about natural born females. That's the problem I have. And I made the statement in another video that the ladies are the weaker sex. And they are physically. That's what I meant. One of my subscribers said she was offended that I said women are physically weaker. But folks, they are physically. I mean, They're stronger in a lot of other ways. They're mentally not inferior to the male sex, I don't think. But physically, they're not as strong. And normally they're not as large. Normally they don't have as much lung capacity and stuff like that. That's what I meant. And I gotta quit letting that stuff hurt. When somebody says something, I don't consider her saying what she said to be an insult, but she said she was I can't even remember what she said, but do you get my point? That's just my opinion. But anyway, that out of the way. Now back to my family. I have found, and here lately, I have really become aware and acutely aware that the older I get, the lonelier I get. And by that I mean all the people. Now, my grandmother Pearson and granddaddy Pearson, Luther Russell Pearson, they had 9 children. And I got it right here in front of me. Let's see if I can. They had Ruby Pearson. They had Aubrey Pearson. They had Russell M. Pearson, my dad. They had Dorothy Pearson. And I just found out that her middle name is Peebles. Where did that come from? I hope that's right. I think she was born in 1924. Aunt Dorothy, she had 3 children. She had Mahood George Winkler, her husband. That was her husband. But they had a daughter named Vicky. They had a son named Douglas William Winkler and a son, Mahood Jr. And then that was Aunt Dorothy's kids. Then there was Bertha Lewis and Uncle Jack, which his name was Jesse Lee. Aunt Dora, she was one of the older ones. And Rosa May and J.V. Pearson, he was in the Navy for 20 years. He was a young Uncle J.B. And Ann Pearson, I think she was the youngest. But that's 9 kids that they had. And so I grew up all around these people. And the only ones out of them 9 that I just read off that's still living, as far as I know, is Aunt Dorothy. And I'm fixing to find out, well, I hope she is, but she's getting close to around 100 years old. But all my other aunts and uncles, they are dead. They're gone. And most JB's kids, I think they're all still living. Aunt Rosa May, she never had any children, but she had an adopted daughter named Lisa that I barely knew. Aunt Dora had 5 children. John, what is that doing up there twice? I'm going to have to get rid of that. John was a doctor. He was a dentist. Barbara, these are first cousins. I'm reading them now. Barbara used to make us pray a lot. When we got into mischief and stuff, she got on to us boys. And she wasn't that much older. I think she was about 3 or 4 years older than me. But boy, you get into some mischief, she catches you praying. You're praying. What is John doing in there all those different times? And John, funny thing about John was married to a woman named Evelyn J. Harris, and Barbara was married to a man named J.D. Harris. J.D. and Evelyn were brother and sister. Then there was Ruth. She married Bud Connor. Ruth Madison, she was one of the older ones, and I think she had 2 or 3 kids. But funny thing about Evelyn and J.D., they were married to brother and sister, and they were divorced. Then there was T.G., Tara Glenn Madison Jr. He was a teacher and a principal of a high school. Then there was Charles Madison, closer to my age. And he's got kids, I don't know who they are. But Charles and I grew up kind of together. But what I'm saying is, all these people, everybody in this family here, Charles is dead, TG's dead, Bruce dead, John's dead, and Aunt Mamie and Uncle Jack's 2 boys, Frankie and Lewis, they're both dead. Aunt Mamie's dead. All my aunts and uncles are dead except Aunt Dorothy. And this is like, that group of people was my whole world. I finally felt like the black sheep in that family because my mama and daddy, Mama left Daddy in Mother's Day 1951, and that was, I don't know if anybody else in the family was divorced before that or not. Aunt Rosa May might have been, I don't know. I know she was, oh boy, what was her husband's first name? I can't remember. But she remarried to Maynard Gupton. Maynard Gupton was a World War II veteran. But that was my whole world. And I remember a lot of them always talking about, what about Russell, when Daddy and Mama separated and divorced, and they always talking about, well, what about Russell's kids? Who's going to take care of Russell? My dad was an alcoholic, and they knew full well that he wasn't really capable of taking care of those kids. Because when Mama left, she took Michael and Joe with her and left me, Carolyn, and George at Grandma Pearson's. Rosa Mae started keeping George there for a few years. And George, for some reason, they were farmers. For some reason, George ran away. When he was about 14 or 15, he ran away. And for a couple of years, he got a job and took care of himself during all that time. But as a whole, my family, I'm sitting here looking at Uncle Aubrey's. Uncle Aubrey had 5 or 6 kids. Uncle Aubrey's the one that had Diane and Shirley and the twins. I kind of had a crush on the twins. There was maybe 3 of my first cousins I had a crush on. I had a crush on Barbara. She never knew it till just read. She was a hottie. Doug, one of my first cousins, said I shouldn't be calling her a hottie. Well, it's just all in jest, you know, but I thought she was beautiful. But her and Diane and Shirley Ann was twins. And they me and Diane and Shirley, we got in trouble one time. We was sleeping on a pallet at Grandma's house, and because there was a lot of people in that time, so the kids all had to sleep on a pallet. And me, my sister Carolyn, and Ray, the twins' brother, and the twins were all sleeping on this same pallet together. We were at the age where they didn't think they had to separate the boys from the girls. But we wasn't really doing nothing, but Grandma didn't like what she was hearing and what she's saying. And I can't remember if was we kissing. I don't remember. But all of them got spankings with Grandma's switch, except me. I don't know if it was because I hid so well or Grandma just lost count. I don't remember. But now Betty Brown, that was Uncle Ruby's daughter. I liked her, but we didn't spend a lot of time together. Aunt Ruby had Betty and Tommy Leonard. But I come from a big family, and I get to thinking about it. I look at this family reunion picture that was made in 1954, everybody in that picture. And 90-something%, 99%, I would say 98% of them are all dead and gone. And it just gives me a real lonesome feeling. 'Cause I've got memories of every one of them. Every one of them. And there's not many of us that have a living memory of Granddad and Grandmama's house. That was out in the country. Now, where the house sit is a gas station and a car wash. That was really out in the country. And I got a lot of memories of that house. Big old two-story house. That's the house upstairs that I went over to a window. We didn't have a toilet inside. And I went over to a window and started peeing out that window. And just so happened that Grandmama was right below that window stepping outside that door. And she was peeing. Oh. That sounds disgusting. I'm sorry, but that's what happened. And she come after me, running up the stairs and whip me, and that's the only time I can ever remember my mama coming to my defense. But she said, "No way, you ain't switching my boy." But she was gonna tear me a new one. But I peed right on top of her. Oh my goodness. Grandmama was a diabetic. And I remember her giving herself shots of insulin. And that was a real mean-looking hypodermic. She had to take a hypodermic needle and fill it up each time she was going to get a shot. Now, I think Grandmama died about 1954. My grandmother on my mother's side, she died in 1953. But I was a lot closer to the Pearson side of the family than I was the Holt side. The Holt side being my mama's side. And, you know, since I started messing with this family reunion tree again, I found out some things that it is what it is, but it bothers me that one of my granddaddies, I think my great-great-granddaddy, was a slave owner. And when I was researching that my grandmama Hope, her name was Vistula, her maiden name was Batts. And that part of the country right now, I started researching that one time, and then I kept coming up with these bats and things, and I was getting the phone numbers and I was calling them up, and they'd say, "You might not want to be digging too much into that." Turns out some of the bats that I was talking to were black, and their ancestors were former slaves, owned by none other than the Batts family. That bothered me. But you know, that was them. That was them, those people. That was people I had nothing to do with. But it still bothered me to think about it. And I wish I would quit slurring my speech so much. I had a stroke. I'm just lucky it was just a warning stroke, they call it. But yeah, I feel lonely. So many of my family is gone. I've still got my daughter. My son died in '86. But so many of them are gone. I had more years with my families, my Pearson families, than I had with my own son. I only had 14 years with my son. I was sitting here looking at the roof. I hope some of these people are coming out. I've been sending out some invites to the emails of some of my cousins and stuff. I'm hoping they'll go in there and correct the dates. Like, I know Charles Madison, that's one of my cousins. His daddy, Terry Glenn Madison, was a Methodist minister. And I'll tell you what, man, when I'd be staying over there or something, and we'd have to be sitting in that church pretty close to the front. And me and Charles, and usually Timmy and Ray, we'd be sitting there and we'd all swear up and down that Uncle Glenn, when he was preaching, he was looking dead at us, right in our eyes. Of course he wasn't. But that Russian, he liked to tell jokes, he liked to fish. And one night, we were staying at Uncle Glenn and Aunt Dora's house, and me and Charles and Timmy and Ray got to spend the night in the garage. That's when the garages were separate from the house. And we got into a pillow fight in that thing. And Uncle Glenn come out there and seen us, feathers all floating around. Boy, he got on us. We had to pick up every feather. I remember that. Charles was the youngest son of Aunt Dora and Uncle Glenn. Oh, boy, me and him used to get in some scraps. Yes, we did. Anyhow, that's my video for today. I'll put it up in the morning. And Doug, if you happen to be watching the video, here I am, my friend. Doug is 62. I'm 82, so I'm 20 years older than him. So that means he was born... he was born in 61. Let's see what... where's Dorothy at? Let me see. Dorothy's right there. Douglas, yeah, I'm way off on his, he was born in 61. He was born in 61. Let me correct that right now. Got that right. Yeah. Doug was born in 61. The reason I know that is because he told me a while ago on the email that he was 62, and that meant 20 years different. 61 or 62, somewhere thereabouts. Anyway, folks, that's my video, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And again, folks, if I offend anyone about what I've been saying about transgenders and stuff like that, I apologize. And the biggest thing I had a problem with is transgender men competing against in women's sports against natural born females. Not right. Not right. Anyway, see ya. See ya. Go.